James Wild.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's a privilege to follow my honourable friend who's given an incredibly powerful speech giving voice to the victims and the horrific abuse and the impact that it has had on them. And he's been consistent in this House, he's led on this issue, and his words should carry incredible weight. And today we are debating what should be an uncontroversial motion to exclude from the government's automatic early release scheme anyone convicted of a serious offence against a child or an adult, including rape, or anyone convicted of attempted conspiracy or incitement to commit such offences. By any definition, those are some of the most serious crimes. And I find it very difficult to understand how anyone would oppose the common sense position that sex offenders should not benefit from the government's early release scheme. But sadly, it's been necessary to bring forward this motion because previously Labour members and Liberal Democrats in the House of Lords voted down our amendments to the Sentencing Act to do precisely that, to prevent the early release of such offenders. And now it seems that today there will not be a vote and the motion will simply be accepted. That is very welcome if it reflects a shift in policy. But I wasn't clear from the Minister who opened the debate whether he did accept the shift in policy or whether he was simply making a tactical retreat on a vote the government knew that they would lose, because he repeatedly set out the rationale for these changes, as he had done earlier on the media today. But the urgency here is clear. Thousands of victims have received letters. My honourable friends have spoken about the dreadful impact and the offensive nature of those letters to victims, telling them that in September the first wave of criminals will be released. Others will not yet have been informed. And the Minister once again failed to give basic figures on the number of sex offenders who will be released under these provisions. Surely he must know. It's his job to know, and he should be honest and upfront with the House. And we can already picture the unedifying scenes, the bottles of champagne that will be opened at the prison gates when these offenders are released. Meanwhile, the survivors of their crimes will, as they've told every member of this House in the letter that the Shadow Justice Secretary referred to, they will be feeling scared, heartbroken, struggling and angry that their perpetrators are not facing justice. And then the Minister once again rolled out the Aunt Sally argument that without these measures the justice system would have fallen over. But it's now 2 years since the general election, 2 years in which the government has chosen to let people out early rather than take action on prison places. There are 16,000 people on remand in our prisons. Yet the government is failing to ensure that our courts are used to the maximum capacity. Today, for example, 14% of the Crown Courts in our country are not sitting. Where is the commissioning of emergency prison capacity? Where is the greater deployment of rapid deployment cells the previous government rolled out, including at HMP Norwich in my county? Where is the urgency? This should be a national priority. I give way to my honourable friend.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. Does he agree with me that in tackling the Crown Court backlog, the government was far too slow in uncapping the maximum number of sitting days for Crown Court judges? And in addition, the government is wasting a great deal of time and effort in trying to curtail the right to jury trials, which will have no appreciable effect on the Crown Court backlog, and is in fact wasting parliamentary time, civil service time, for a reform that we know the Right Honourable Member for Makerfield will most probably junk.
James Wild.
I completely agree with my honourable friend. We had the Lady Chief Justice appearing before parliamentary committees telling MPs that she could have more sitting days if only the government would produce, I think it was around £20 million of funding, a fairly minimal amount in the scheme of the £1.3 trillion that the government spends every year to increase those sitting days rather than go down the route of removing people's right to jury trials in certain cases. And the places that are coming online in our prisons are those commissioned by the last government. And yeah, I accept we should have commissioned more. But we've heard that the Minister's confirmed in his own parliamentary answers that no new prisons have been planned or approved since the general election. No new prisons have been planned by this government. Politics is about choices, and ministers have chosen early release, softer sentencing, rather than ensuring public protection and punishment. And that is despite government ministers saying that the most serious and violent offenders would be excluded from this change. Anyone who's listened to the testimonies my honourable friend has shared with the House could not consider that they do not represent the most serious and violent offenders. I give way to my friend.
My honourable friend's making a powerful speech, and I'm grateful for him giving way. It would be straightforward for the government to issue a statement. A written statement would do, actually, on the back of today's debate, simply excluding the kind of offenders that have been highlighted by a variety of honourable members, but in particular my honourable friend from Keighley. I think the Minister might confirm when she winds up that it is the government's intention to issue such a statement, and we can then move on.
Well, I agree with my right honourable friend, and it looked like Labour MPs were set to be whipped against this motion to stop the early release of sex offenders who committed crimes against children. And when I was first elected to this House, I had to explain to my whip and to the Minister in post then that I would not be supporting a measure to bring forward an early release scheme for offenders. I expect many of my newly elected colleagues did the same, and that measure was then withdrawn. And so whilst MPs may not be whipped to vote against today, and there seems to be common cause from members opposite in the chamber, we've heard nothing from the Minister who opened and spoke but failed to address what are the next steps. There might be some grounds for optimism. The right honourable member for Makerfield apparently is looking how to tighten this scheme to exclude such offenders. But if this change is going to happen, then the legislation needs to come forward now. And we know that the new Prime Minister will not be in post until we have risen for the summer recess. Tomorrow and Thursday we have general debates in this House. The motion calls on the government, the motion which it looks like will pass without division, calls on the government to bring forward legislation immediately. So if the government is going to accept the motion, then what is its plan? Is it going to bring forward those commencement regulations to today implementation, as my right honourable friend set out earlier? Is it going to bring forward emergency legislation tomorrow or Thursday or next week? We've had no response from the Minister in his opening, which I found deeply disappointing. And I think those who were in the gallery earlier and those victims across the country deserve answers today on what the government is going to do. So by passing this motion today, we can begin the process to prevent those guilty of rape or grooming from being released early. We can provide reassurance to victims that we put their interests first, and we can show that public protection is our priority.
Cooper.